You open your notes. You look at the goals you wrote weeks ago, the habits you promised yourself you would build, the project you said you would finally start, the routine you were sure would change everything. And instead of feeling motivated, you feel heavy. It's not because you don't care. It's certainly not because you're lazy. It's because somewhere along the way, life got messy. The momentum you once had just disappeared. And now the thought of starting again feels harder, somehow heavier than starting for the very first time. So today, we're going to talk about how to start over when you feel completely and utterly stuck. Not with a huge, dramatic life reset, not by chasing a perfect morning routine, but with a small, quiet system that helps you simply move again. When people feel stuck, their first instinct is usually to blame their discipline. They say things to themselves like, I just need to be more consistent, or I need to stop wasting time, or the classic, I have to get my life together. But most of the time, being stuck isn't a discipline problem, it's a friction problem. There is too much emotional friction, too much mental clutter floating around in your head, too many unfinished loops, those open tabs in your brain that drain your energy. There are too many decisions to make, and maybe, worst of all, there are too many versions of yourself that you feel like you've disappointed. So your brain, in an act of self-preservation, does something very understandable. It avoids the whole thing. It shuts down. Because starting over doesn't just mean doing the task. It means facing the gap between who you wanted to be by now and where you are right now. That gap can feel painful. It can feel like a judgment, and it's that feeling, that friction, that keeps you frozen in place. So the very first shift we need to make is this. Starting over is not proof that you failed. Starting over is part of the process. Every single meaningful thing in life has restarts built directly into its DNA. You restart after a bad week at work. You restart after a busy season with family. You restart after you lose motivation, because motivation is a fickle guest that comes and goes. You restart after trying a system that didn't work for you. You restart after realizing the perfect plan that looked so good on paper just doesn't fit the reality of your actual life. The goal isn't to create a flawless life where you never fall off track. That's a fantasy. The real, achievable goal is to create a life where falling off isn't the end of the story. A good system, a good plan, doesn't depend on perfect consistency. It simply gives you a way back. It's a well-lit path that says, here, start here again. So, how do we find that path? The first step to starting over is to stop judging yourself and simply name the season you're in. Because different seasons of life require completely different systems. Maybe you're in a recovery season. You're tired, you're stretched thin, and your mind and body are screaming for you to do less, not more. Maybe you're in a rebuilding season. You've lost your momentum, but you feel a small spark of readiness to slowly, gently create some structure again. Maybe you're in a focus season. You have clarity on what matters most, but you need to ruthlessly remove the distractions that are pulling you away.
Or maybe you're in a transition season. Your life has changed. A new job, a new city, a new relationship, and your old routines simply do not fit anymore. Most people stay stuck because they try to use the wrong system for the season they're actually in. They try to force a high-performance go-getter routine when their body is desperate for recovery. They try to implement a strict minute-by-minute schedule when what they really need is clarity and space. So ask yourself with total honesty, what season am I actually in? Not the season you wish you were in, not the one that would look impressive to others. What season right now is true for you? Once you've named the season, the next step is to choose one restart point. Not 10, not your whole life, just one. This is where most resets fail. You feel behind, so you create a massive, overwhelming plan to fix everything at once. Your sleep, your fitness, your work, your finances, your creative projects, your messy house, your screen time, everything. And because everything feels important, everything becomes overwhelming. You're paralyzed before you even begin. But starting over works best when you shrink the battlefield. Choose one single place where building a little momentum would make the biggest difference. Where would a small win create the most relief? Maybe it's your mornings, just getting the first hour right. Maybe it's your physical workspace. A clear desk could lead to a clearer mind. Maybe it's your weekly planning or your health or that one important project you keep avoiding. Stop asking, how do I fix my entire life? Instead ask, where would one small, tangible win create the most breathing room for me right now? That is your restart point. Now for the most important part of this whole process. Step 3. Lower the entry cost. Make the first step so small it feels almost embarrassingly easy. When you're stuck, your brain sees any goal as a massive mountain. Get healthy, fix my routine, start my business. These are too big, they're paralyzing. So you have to lower the entry cost. Instead of get healthy, your first step is to take a 10-minute walk. Instead of fix my routine, your first step is to just plan tomorrow morning. Instead of clean everything, just clear one surface, your nightstand, the kitchen counter. Instead of trying to be productive, commit to one focused block of 20 minutes. The point isn't that this tiny action solves the whole problem. It doesn't. The point is that it breaks the freeze. It proves to your brain that movement is possible. Momentum rarely begins with a burst of confidence. More often, confidence is the result of taking that first tiny step. It begins after movement. So when you are stuck, stop waiting for the perfect plan. Just ask yourself, what is the smallest possible action that would make me feel like I'm back in motion? The next mistake people make is thinking they only need to start over once. You don't. You need a reset loop.
A reset loop is a simple, repeatable process you can come back to whenever you drift. Because you will drift. You will have bad days. You will lose focus. You will get busy or get overwhelmed or just forget the plan. That is normal. That is human. The question isn't, how do I never drift again? The question is, what is my process for when I notice I have drifted? Here's a simple reset loop you can use. 4 steps. First, pause. Don't spiral into shame or frustration. Just notice and pause. Second, clear the noise. Grab a piece of paper and write down everything that's taking up mental space. Third, choose one priority. Not the most impressive one, the most relieving one. What one thing would create the most ease? And fourth, take one visible action, something you can see, finish, or check off a list. Then you repeat it tomorrow. This is how you rebuild trust with yourself, not by making huge, sweeping promises, but by creating small, consistent pieces of evidence that you can rely on yourself to show up. So here is a practical exercise you can do today to put all this into motion. Set a timer for 20 minutes. For the first 5 minutes, do a brain dump. Write down everything that feels stuck, messy, or overwhelming. Don't organize it, don't judge it, just get it out of your head and onto the page. For the next 5 minutes, look at that list and circle only 3 things that actually matter this week, not forever, just this week. For the next 5 minutes, choose one action from those 3 things that you can complete today. Make it so small that it would feel silly not to do it. And for the final 5 minutes, do the very first part of that action immediately. Open the document, write the first sentence, put on your shoes for the walk, send the 1-sentence email. The goal of this exercise isn't to transform your life in 20 minutes. The goal is to prove to yourself that you are not frozen. You are available for movement again. When you feel completely stuck, the answer is usually not to become a new person overnight. It is to give the current version of yourself a gentle, compassionate way back. Name the season you are in. Choose one restart point. Lower the entry cost. Build a reset loop and take one small, visible action. Starting over doesn't need to be dramatic. Sometimes it's just one quiet decision that says to yourself, I am not done. And that is more than enough to begin again.